The ancient oak tree stood dying in the middle of the wasteland, its massive trunk scarred by lightning, its branches bare except for a single, withered leaf that refused to fall. For 300 years, it had been the guardian of this valley, but now the drought had lasted 7 years, and even the mighty oak was surrendering to death. But here's what no one knew. Not the scientists who had declared this land barren forever, not the government officials who had written it off as uninhabitable, not even the native tribes who had abandoned their ancestral home. This dying tree held a secret that would change everything. Deep within its hollow trunk, protected by centuries of accumulated wisdom and one final act of defiance, lay a single seed. But this wasn't just any seed. This was the last seed of a species that had been extinct for over 1,000 years, a magical variety that could transform desert into paradise, drought into abundance, despair into hope. The seed had been waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right conditions, waiting for someone brave enough to believe in the impossible. And today, that someone was about to arrive. Maya Chen stepped out of a battered jeep, her boots crunching on the cracked earth. The GPS on her phone had died 2 hours ago, and she was completely lost. The 28-year-old botanist had spent her entire career studying extinct plant species, but her peers called her work romantic nonsense, and her funding had been cut just last month. She was here chasing a legend. Ancient stories spoke of a miracle seed that could bring life to the deadest ground. Her grandmother had told her these stories as a child, stories passed down through generations of their family. But Maya was the first to actually come looking. As she approached the dying oak, something glinted in the hollow of its trunk. Her heart stopped. There, nestled in a bed of ancient bark, was a seed unlike anything she had ever seen. It was perfectly preserved, about the size of a walnut, with intricate patterns etched into its surface that seemed to shift and change in the light. The moment Maya touched it, the seed began to glow with a soft, warm light. And then something extraordinary happened. The withered leaf on the oak tree turned green, just for a moment, as if the tree was passing its final blessing to the seed. Maya knew she was holding something that would change her life forever. But she had no idea that planted in the wrong place, this seed could also destroy everything she had ever cared about. Back in her small apartment that doubled as a laboratory, Maya studied the seed for weeks. Every test she ran defied scientific explanation. The seed contained genetic material from plants that had been extinct for millennia, yet it was somehow alive, vibrant, waiting. She decided to plant it in the most controlled environment possible, a specially prepared greenhouse with perfect soil, optimal temperature, and precise lighting. If this seed was truly magical, surely it would thrive here. She planted it on a Monday morning, watering it with distilled water and monitoring it with every piece of equipment she owned. She waited and waited. Days turned into weeks. Nothing happened. The seed sat there, dormant, refusing to even crack open. Maya began to doubt herself. Maybe her colleagues were right. Maybe she was just a dreamer chasing fairy tales. But then she remembered her grandmother's words. The greatest magic happens not when everything is perfect, but when everything seems impossible. That night, Maya had a dream. She saw the seed's journey through time, how it had been created by an ancient civilization that understood the deep connection between struggle and growth. They had engineered it not to grow in perfect conditions, but to thrive in the harshest environments imaginable. The seed needed adversity. It needed challenge. It needed to be planted where nothing else could survive. Maya woke with absolute clarity. She packed her jeep with camping supplies and drove back to the wasteland where she had found the seed. This time, she would plant it in the exact spot where the great oak had stood, in the most barren, hopeless place she could find. As she dug into the hard-packed earth with her bare hands, cutting them on rocks and thorns, she whispered to the seed, "If you're really magical, show me, not in comfort, but here where it's impossible." Maya planted the seed just as the sun was setting, and then she waited. She had brought enough supplies to camp for a month, determined to witness whatever happened, or didn't happen. The first week was brutal. Temperatures soared to 115 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and dropped to near freezing at night. Sandstorms scoured the landscape. Her water ran low. Her phone died. She was completely alone in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. And still, nothing happened. By the second week, Maya was beginning to hallucinate from dehydration and exhaustion. She saw mirages of green forests and flowing rivers. She heard voices of a family calling her home. Her rational mind screamed that she was going to die here, that she had thrown her life away for a fantasy. But something deeper kept her going. A voice that whispered, "The darkest hour is just before the dawn." On the 14th night, delirious with fever and barely conscious, Maya crawled to the spot where she had planted the seed. The ground was still hard, still barren. She pressed her face to the earth and wept. "I believed in you," she whispered. "I gave you everything I had." That's when she felt it, the faintest vibration in the ground, like a heartbeat. Maya's eyes snapped open. There, in the exact spot where she had planted the seed, a hairline crack had appeared in the earth. And from that crack, the tiniest green shoot emerged, no bigger than a blade of grass, but glowing with the same warm light she had seen in the seed. As she watched in amazement, the shoot grew, not slowly, as normal plants grow, but visibly reaching toward the stars. By morning, it was a foot tall. By the next evening, it was taller than Maya herself. But the real miracle wasn't the speed of growth. It was what was happening to the ground around it. The hard-packed earth was softening. Moisture was appearing where there had been none. The very air seemed to be changing, becoming more humid, more alive. Maya realized she was witnessing something that would revolutionize everything humanity thought it knew about agriculture, about ecology, about the very nature of life itself. Over the next month, Maya watched in wonder as the impossible became reality. The single plant grew into a tree, then began producing seeds of its own. But these weren't seeds that would grow into identical trees. They were seeds that would grow into whatever the land needed most. Where the soil was too acidic, the seeds became plants that neutralized pH. Where there was no water, the seeds became deep-rooted plants that could tap into underground sources. Where the ground was too hard, the seeds became plants with powerful root systems that could break through anything. The plant wasn't just growing. It was teaching the land how to be alive again. Wildlife began to return. First insects, then small animals, then birds. The local climate began to shift. Rain clouds formed for the first time in years. The wasteland was becoming an oasis. Maya documented everything, but she faced a terrible dilemma. She knew that when the world discovered what she had found, this place would be overrun with scientists, corporations, and governments. The delicate balance of this rebirth could be destroyed by the very attention it would receive. Maya's footage and research notes were explosive. When she finally returned to civilization, she was offered everything she had ever dreamed of: unlimited funding, fame, recognition, a chance to be remembered as a scientist who saved the world. But there was a catch. The corporations wanted to patent the seed's genetics. The governments wanted to weaponize its power. The scientists wanted to control its distribution. Maya realized that in trying to save the world, she might destroy the very thing she had discovered. The seed's magic came from its freedom to grow where it was needed most, not from being controlled and commercialized. She made a choice that shocked everyone who knew her. She destroyed her research notes, deleted her files, and refused to reveal the exact location of the growing oasis. "Some things," she told the stunned reporters, "are too important to be owned." But Maya wasn't giving up. She had learned the seed's secret. It didn't need to be controlled or mass-produced. It needed to be shared freely, planted by people who understood its true nature. She began traveling the world, seeking out the forgotten places, the abandoned lands, the spots where everyone had given up hope. She would arrive quietly, plant a seed, and move on. She never stayed to take credit or document the results. Within 5 years, reports began coming in from around the globe. Deserts blooming, damaged ecosystems healing, communities that had been struggling for generations suddenly finding their land fertile again. The scientific community was baffled. Environmental groups were celebrating. But Maya remained anonymous, known only as the seed keeper in the whispered stories that spread from village to village. What Maya had discovered wasn't just a magical seed. It was a principle that applied to all of life. The seed succeeded not because it was planted in perfect conditions, but because it was planted where it was needed most, in the places where everything seemed impossible. She began to see this pattern everywhere. The strongest trees grew on the windiest cliff tops. The most beautiful flowers bloomed in the harshest conditions. The most resilient people came from the most difficult circumstances. The seed had taught her that struggle wasn't the enemy of growth, it was a catalyst for it. 10 years after planting the first seed, Maya encountered a young man named David at one of her secret planting sites. He was a former gang member from the inner city, someone who had lost everything and was ready to give up on life. David had heard whispers about the mysterious woman who brought life to dead places, and he had come looking for her, not knowing why, just knowing that he needed to find her. Maya saw something in David that reminded her of herself, a dreamer who had been told too many times that his dreams were impossible. She decided to share her secret with him. "I'm going to teach you something," she said, handing him a seed. "But first, you need to understand that this seed won't work if you plant it in rich soil or comfortable conditions. It only grows where it's needed most, in the places where everyone else has given up." David looked at the seed, then at the wasteland around them. "How do I know where it's needed most?" Maya smiled. "You'll know. The seed will call to you. It will show you the places where hope has died, where people have stopped believing in tomorrow. And that's where you'll plant it." David became Maya's first student, but not her last. Over the years, she trained dozens of people, farmers who had lost their land to drought, scientists who had been rejected by their peers, community leaders who had watched their neighborhoods decay. Each student learned the same lesson. The seed's power came not from being protected and preserved, but from being shared and planted in the most challenging places. They called themselves the seed keepers, and they developed a network that spanned the globe. They communicated through coded messages, met in secret, and shared their seeds freely with anyone who understood the responsibility that came with them. The rule was simple: never plant a seed where life is already thriving. Always plant where life seems impossible. Narrator, did Maya succeed? Is the seed truly a magic needed to change our world today? Or it's just a means to an end? Are there challenges the seed keepers might face? Watch out for part 2. Kindly like and subscribe so that you don't miss out of what happens next.